Focusing mainly on ways to achieve peace on the Korean peninsula. We'll bring you special live coverage.
The late former First Lady Lee Hee-ho is laid to rest at the National Cemetery next to her husband and former President Kim Dae-jung. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un sends his condolences, saying the former first couple's devotions have become the foundation of current inter-Korean ties.
Tensions between the U.S. and Iran flare up again after Washington blames Tehran for attacks on 2 oil tankers in the Gulf of Oman. The incident sends global oil prices soaring.
And with only a couple of days to go before the Under-20 World Cup final, South Korea's Under-20 sound confident ahead of their clash against the Ukraine. News Center begins now. Hello and welcome to Arirang News Center, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Noah Ram.
And I'm Han-dan. Thanks for joining us. We're starting our newscast a bit earlier today as President Moon Jae-in, who is now in Sweden for the last leg of his 3-nation Nordic tour, is due to give a speech at the Swedish Parliament in just a few minutes. And we'll bring you live coverage of that speech, plus a short Q&A session with the press that will follow.
That's right. Much attention will be focused on what kind of message President Moon will deliver on his peace drive of the Korean peninsula. And for more analysis on the speech, we are joined today by Dr. Kim Yo-jong, Professor at the Korea National Diplomatic Academy. Dr. Kim, it is lovely to have you with us tonight. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Now, this is the second speech set to be given by President Moon during his trip to Northern Europe. While in Oslo, the capital of Norway, he gave a speech focusing on peace for the people. What kind of message do you expect from today's speech?
Yes, in Oslo, President Moon Jae-in delivered a speech focusing on the concept of peace. I mean, the Nordic countries have been very liberal countries, even inside the continent of Europe, and they have been a very important mediator between North Korea and the United States historically. So I think the peace of the concept of peace that these countries have been pursuing historically, even during the Cold period, was very peculiar. And in Oslo, President Moon Jae-in talked about the concept of peace, very active peace, something that can change the phenomenon, something more practical. So I think in today's speech, I think President Moon Jae-in can focus on something else. I'm not sure what that is, but I don't think he will repeat the same content of speech that he had delivered in Oslo.
So hopefully we can expect something more tonight. Sweden had abandoned its nuclear weapons program in the 1960s. Could you tell us about how and why Sweden had decided to give up its nuclear development, and also a bit more about the significance today's venue holds?
Well, several factors would be there. I mean, during the Cold period, the U.S. and the former Soviet Union was in, arms race, and definitely all other countries in Europe were affected by that kind of, bipolar arms race system. But as I have mentioned, the Nordic countries, their people are very liberal. They tend to be more focused on the disarmament rather than armament. They have begun as, neutral countries after the Second World War. And I think as a neutral country, I think Swedish people have some opinions inside Sweden whether being a nuclear state would be really beneficial for their interests. There were a lot of debates inside, even though they have a full capabilities, nuclear capabilities to become a nuclear state. Of course, second factor I think we can think about is some international communities, situations at the time. There were a lot of nuclear strategies developed, even inside the United States and Soviet Unions. First, there were talking and thinking about some of the nuclear strategies. For example, if one country shoots nuclear missiles, the other countries have to have some safety of nuclear arsenals so that they can retaliate back. So that kind of strategies develop in the initial phase, but Something that happened in the 1960s was responsive, more flexible response, which means that nuclear weapons cannot be really used in a real, warfare. I mean, they would kill all the people. So they tried to be more, flexible. They tried to focus in more, conventional weapon-focused warfare. So these kinds of international communities, nuclear strategy development was kind of focusing and committing, contributing that Swedish people can really think that maybe nuclear weapons development would be something futile for their interests.
Right.
Now on the screen we can see the Swedish Parliament in Stockholm, where President Moon Jae-in will soon deliver a speech focusing mainly on ways to achieve peace on the Korean Peninsula and hopefully some more specific ways to denuclearize North Korea.
And it looks like they are getting ready for a photo op at the moment. Now, Dr. Kim, if President Moon succeeds in earning support for his, from the Nordic nations on his peace drive on the Korean Peninsula and towards denuclearizing North Korea, how much would it help in resolving the current deadlock at the moment between North Korea and the United States?
You mean Nordic countries?
Yeah, if he gets the support from the northern European countries.
Yes, Sweden and Norway, especially Sweden, was very, helpful in dealing with North Korea issues. Many scholars in Sweden, Stockholm, think tanks and government, they were always good, mediator between North Korean scholars and the South Korean and also the United States. Many of colleagues, South Korean colleagues that I have known have been visiting Swedish think tanks or universities as visiting scholars, and North Korean scholars were there also as visiting scholars. Then they had a lot of communications with each other. Also, Swedish government have been a good supporter for holding a venue for a casual and track 1 and track 2 talks between, for example, South Korea and North Korea. Government people and scholars and so on and so forth. So I think they have been very helpful for a kind of dialogue setting up for the denuclearization effort of South Korean government. In the future, this kind of process I think will continue. But despite the efforts of Swedish government to help, the major deadlock came from the North Korean attitude. And I think in that sense, there should be more and more dialogue and efforts by Swedish government to persuade the attitude of, Chairman Kim Jong-un, I think.
Now, to walk our viewers through on the latest developments surrounding the Korean Peninsula, President Moon Jae-in, when asked about whether a fourth inter-Korean summit could be possible within this month, he said it's not physically impossible. And while North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has delivered a letter to U.S. President Trump, which President Trump described as beautiful, and U.S. Special Representative for North Korea Stephen Biegun will likely visit Seoul within at the end of this month. Now, can we expect some major progress this month in resolving the nuclear deadlock?
Well, I think the South Korean government definitely wants to resume the dialogue between North Korea and the United States. It has been stalemated after the Hanoi failure. So I think, but the situation is not very easy for us to resume the dialogue. North Korea and Kim Jong-un has sent a letter to President Trump, but the response by President Trump is it's beautiful, possible, but not now. So I think the U.S. will just continue to posture towards North Korea. It wants a big deal, not only small deals, but the U.S. position is that there should be a dialogue and coordination with North Korea about the big picture, the roadmap, a definition of denuclearization, the end point of denuclearization.
Dr. Kim, I am so sorry. I would have to cut you there for a minute. We can see on screen President Moon now taking a photo with King of Sweden, the chair as well as vice chairs of the Swedish Parliament. And we will expect President Moon's within minutes. And now the Swedish Parliament will give a brief introduction of who President Moon Jae-in is. Now, Dr. Kim, continuing on with the questions.
Right.
I'm sorry I had to cut you there.
Right. During a speech in Oslo, he said that what we need now is not a new declaration, but efforts to deepen trust and cement determination for dialogue. But despite the fact that both Pyongyang and Washington have been showing willingness to continue the dialogue, not much progress has been made. What do you make of that? And what would you say then would be a more pragmatic approach? Oh, sorry. Before you answer that, let's just take a listen to the introduction.
I would also like to say a special good evening to the audience in the Republic of Korea, where I know this event is broadcast live.
Oh, okay. Sorry, back to the question.
On behalf of myself
we
and the
can
Swedish
catch
Parliament,
up with that introduction a little bit later.
Yeah,
so there hasn't been much progress made yet. What do you make of that, and what would be a more pragmatic approach to the current deadlock at the moment?
South Korean government already talked enough with the United States about what would be good roadmap between North Korea and the United States. South Korea already persuade the United States approaches for one deal, a big deal approach, and that now the U.S. accepting South Korean proposal kind of adjusts its positions. Like after the big deal agreement, the process and implementation should be based upon small deals. And I think the South Korean government already talked with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un already enough. I mean, Kim Jong-un knows what is going on. Kim Jong-un knows what the U.S. position is, and also knows why there have been failure after the Hanoi summit. So I think from the Oslo speech, President Moon Jae-in made it clear that what is important now is trust building, rather than specific efforts for a declaration.
Dr. Kim, sorry to cut you there, but President Moon is on the stage now and he is about to give his speech to the Swedish Parliament. Let's take a listen.
존경하는 국왕님,
His Majesty the King,
안드레아스 노를옌
Speaker
의장님,
Norlin,
총리님과 의원 여러분,
Prime Minister, Riksdag members, and distinguished guests,
부모론,
good morning.
노벨 평화상 수상자
Nobel Peace
알바
Prize laureate Alva
미르달
Mirdar
바로
made
이
her
자리에서
first declaration for
전
global
세계
disarmament
분출을
right
위해
here.
노력하겠다고 처음으로 선언했습니다. 한국의
Former
김대중
Korean
대통령도
President Kim
노벨
Dae-jung also
평화상
came
수상
here
직후
immediately
바로 이
after
자리에서
winning his Nobel Peace
한반도
Prize
평화
to
비전을
reiterate his vision
재차
for peace on the
천명했습니다.
Korean Peninsula.
그로부터
That was
19년이
19 years
흘렀는데
ago,
한반도 평화에
and now I
얼마나
reflect
진전이
how much
있었는지
progress has been made
되돌아보게
with
됩니다.
regard to peace on the Korean
유수
Peninsula.
깊은 스웨덴
It's an
의사당에서
honor to
연설하게
deliver an
되어
address
영광입니다.
at this historic Parliament
따뜻하게
House.
반겨주시고
I would like to express my
연설의
sincere
기회를
gratitude
주신
to the
스웨덴
Swedish
국민과
people,
국왕 외부
His Majesty the King,
의원님들께
and
진심으로
all the members of the
감사드립니다.
Parliament for your heartfelt welcome and the
스웨덴은
opportunity to speak here.
대한민국의
The
오랜
Kingdom of Sweden
친구입니다.
is an old friend of the Republic of
한국
Korea.
전쟁 때
During the Korean War,
야전병원단을
you dispatched a field hospital
2만
unit
5천 명의
that treated some
유엔군과
25,000
포로를
U.S.
치유하고
soldiers and POWs,
국립중앙
and you
의료
helped us
설립을
establish National Medical Center.
민간 의료진들은
Swedish
전쟁
civilian
후에도
medical personnel
살에
remained
남아
in Busan even after the
수교도
war,
맺지 않은 나라의
treating and consoling the people of
치료하고
those government
기도했습니다.
had not established
스웨덴은
diplomatic ties
한국인에게
then.
오랫동안
To us
이상적인
Koreans, Sweden has long been an ideal country.
1968년
In
한국이
1968,
전쟁의
when Korea was
상처 속에서
dreaming of
민주주의를
democracy
꿈꾸던
amid
시절
the wounds of war,
한국의 시인
a Korean
신동엽은
poet named Shin
스웨덴을
Dong-yeop
묘사한
wrote a
시를
verse
썼습니다.
depicting Sweden.
그 시의 일부를
And I will read
읽어보겠습니다.
part of that poem now.
스칸디나비아라든가
In a region
뭐라고
called
하는
Scandinavia or
고장에서는
something, it is said
관광 퇴근하는
when coal miners return home from their mines, they carry in their back pockets of their old work clothes old stained copies of books by Heidegger, Russell, Hemingway, and Gwangju. It is said when the Prime Minister stands in line in front of the ticket window at a train station under the blazing sun to go on a holiday, the station master merely casts a simple greeting and peacefully opens the door to his office and goes in. It is said The people may not know their president's name, but they are familiar with the names of birds, flowers, orchestra conductors, and playwrights in this politically neutral country. It is said people do not allow deadly missiles or tank battalions into their vineyards. It is said when the evening sun sets in a dark red glow, a gentleman with the title of president rides his bicycle down a country road with a bottle of rice wine on the rear rack to visit a poet's house. While reading this verse, Koreans imagined a high level of democracy, peace, and social welfare. Sweden is still beloved by Koreans. Us Koreans gratefully acknowledge and rely on the role that Sweden is undertaking for the sake of peace on the Korean Peninsula. Sweden is the only country in the world running 3 official missions across the Korean Peninsula, respectively in Seoul, in Pyongyang, and in Panmunjeom. North Korea also shows confidence in Sweden's neutrality and impartiality. I want to take this opportunity to salute the Swedish people and leaders for your unwavering support in the quest for peace on the Korean Peninsula over the past 7 decades, and to convey the Korean people's warm friendship. Riksdag members and distinguished guests, although the Kingdom of Sweden and the Republic of Korea are geographically far from each other, situated at the opposite ends of the vast Eurasian continent, we share many things in common. Located on the peninsulas where the Eurasian continent faces the sea, the 2 countries both have endured numerous wars and have struggled ceaselessly to maintain sovereignty. Both countries also have experience in struggling against poverty. Sweden suffered a century-long famine starting in the 18th century, while Korea had to endure colonial rule and war in the 20th century. However, the 2 countries are also similar, particularly in that they have managed to overcome difficulties with the strength of their great people. The people endowed with diligence turned desperately poor economies into prosperous ones, making full use of the manufacturing sector. The well-educated young people did not hesitate to innovate and to take on challenges. The 2 governments proactively support entrepreneurship and start-up businesses, allowing the young to pursue their dreams. Also impressive are the artistic accomplishments of the 2 culture-loving people. The culture and arts of our 2 nations are beloved by the people around the world. The world enjoys the music of ABBA and BTS. Astrid Lindgren's Pippi Longstocking, Stieg Larsson's Millennium Trilogy, and Hangang's Vegetarian are worldwide favorites. What our 2 nations have most in common is our strong determination for peace. What makes the Swedish people magnificent is that you are not simply interested in peace for your own country. Rather, you are involved in the peace process of other countries as well. Sweden has become a guardian of peace for the international community, protecting mankind against the threat of war. The history of Sweden reaching out to people in distress has greatly inspired the people of the Republic of Korea, who dream of complete peace on the Korean Peninsula. In April of last year, the eyes of the world were focused on Panmunjeom on a beautiful and balmy spring day, like a fine summer day here in Sweden. North Korean Chairman Kim Jong-un stepped across the military demarcation line for the first time in history to hold the first inter-Korean summit in a decade. The ardent desire of the Korean people not to repeat the tragedy of war instantly transformed Panmunjeom, a symbol of division, into a birthplace of peace.
어렵사리 만난 남과 북은
Although
전심을
the
다해
South and North
대화하며
faced difficulty in coming together to talk, the two sides had earnest dialogues to promise to open a new path toward peace, prosperity, and coexistence.
합의서를 체결하여
The comprehensive military agreement between the two Koreas was concluded. Thus, the two sides agreed to cease hostile activities, establish no-fly zones, withdraw guard posts, and jointly recover war remains in the DMZ. Due to that meeting on that day, the hiking trails were opened across the border of the two countries. 11 such trails were created in the forest land of the DMZ, where no one had set foot since the armistice agreement was signed 65 years ago. Sooner or later, there will be numerous other paths through which people from both South and North can come and go. This year, the DMZ Peace Trail, which had not been accessible in the past unless one is military personnel, was open to the public, allowing them to walk along the DMZ. The Korean people are fully aware that these changes were possible thanks to international solidarity, support, and assistance of peace-loving global citizens. I'm especially grateful to Sweden, which played a crucial role to provide opportunities for the parties directly concerned in establishing peace on the Korean Peninsula to meet and communicate with one another. We Koreans, encouraged by the Swedish people, have been able to further prosper aspirations for peace on the Korean Peninsula. We will never forget the huge role that you have played for the first Inter-Korean Summit in 2000 to the two historic summits between North Korea and the U.S. RICSA members and the distinguished guests, trust is the strength that made today's Sweden possible. You, the Swedish people, trust one another as well as your government and businesses. As demonstrated in the case of the historic Scheltebaden Agreement signed in 1938, the Swedish people have acquired the wisdom to allow labor and management to negotiate agreements and make decisions, and after decisions are handed down, they are accepted and implemented by all. The historic conducts of Raoul Wallenberg, referred to as Sweden's Oskar Schindler, and Count Folke Bernadotte, who saved concentration camp inmates during World War II with white buses, instilled the belief that somebody will step up to help when others are in need. You, the Swedish people, concur that every member of society should contribute to building a fine society and practice this belief. The same is true for global peace. Every nation should contribute to the establishment of global peace. Sweden decided not to possess nuclear weapons even though you had the technology to develop them. It was truly a Swedish decision to propose and implement peaceful arms reduction rather than resort to nuclear arms to stand against new threats of war. Sweden had the conviction that the mankind could shape a new future and thus to become the first country to renounce nuclear arsenal. Your conviction was that the world would choose prosperity through peace ultimately. The government of Sweden is now practicing its people's belief by engaging in the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons and worldwide renowned official development assistance. The rest of the world is now joining Sweden to nurture trust on one another. I respectfully applaud the Swedish people who are assuming a leading role in fostering love for humanity and peace across the world. RICSA members and distinguished guests, I believe in the path that Sweden has taken so far. The Korean Peninsula must also establish peace through trust and then build stronger trust through peace. Today, I would like to take this opportunity to propose three kinds of trust between the two Koreas. First, the trust between the peoples of both Koreas. There is no difference between the South and North to pursue a better life in peace. Yet it is true that 7 decades of separation and confrontation cannot be reversed in a single day. There might be days when the gaps between the two Koreas seem wider or the feelings of frustration seem deeper. However, both Koreas are of the same people and share a common history that spans 5,000 years. If we open the window for dialogue and do not forsake communicating with each other, misunderstanding will subside and understanding will grow. The inter-Korean dialogues, including the 3 recent summits, have already sparked a number of changes. Hostile military activities were ceased along the military demarcation line. Roads and railroads are being reconnected. Lighthouses nearby the border have been lighted on, enabling fishermen to catch fish in a safe manner. Small but concrete steps toward peace are being taken. Peace in everyday life is underway. When such everyday peace builds up over time, hostility will dissipate, and the people of the two sides will support the peace process. That will mark the beginning of permanent and complete peace. Second, the trust in dialogue. The world would like to have the two Koreas coexist in peace. No country wants a war between the two Koreas. If peace on the Korean Peninsula collapses, peace and stability for all of Northeast Asia will also collapse, and the entire world will suffer a tremendous disaster. Humanity has learned through history that it has to pay higher price to carry out war of any kind than to maintain peace. Therefore, to support peace on the Korean Peninsula is to benefit not only the two Koreas, but the world as a whole. Peace can come true only through peaceful means, which is dialogue. It is dialogue, not nuclear arms, that will keep North Korea secure. The same also applies to the Republic of Korea. It is dialogue, not military forces, that secures peace between the two Koreas. Each other's political system must be mutually respected and guaranteed. This is the foremost and unchangeable prerequisite for peace. If North Korea takes the path of dialogue, no one would threaten the political system or safety of North Korea. North Korea must believe that every problem will be solved by dialogue and trust its dialogue partners. Trust should be a mutual one. This is a prerequisite for dialogue. The people of the South must believe in dialogue with the North. Those who distrust in dialogue slow down the process of peace. Every single person on both sides must believe that dialogue is the sole path to peace. Third, the trust of the international society. Over its long history of 5,000 years, Korea has never invaded other countries. In our sad history, we have only aimed firearms at ourselves. The rest of the world is still concerned about an accidental clash and nuclear armament on the Korean Peninsula. In order to mitigate sanctions of the international community, the concern must be dispelled. North Korea must substantially show to the international community its commitment to completely dismantling its nuclear weapons and to establish a peace regime. Dialogues with the outside world, whether they may be bilateral or multilateral, must go on until North Korea earns the trust of the international community. In addition, North Korea must build peace from inside and prove it by expediting exchanges and cooperation projects previously agreed by the two Koreas. The international society will immediately respond if North Korea puts forth sincere efforts. Sanctions will be lifted and the safety of the North will be secured internationally. The Republic of Korea will stand by the North in its efforts to restore the trust of the international community. Moreover, we will enhance the international community's trust in peace on the Korean Peninsula by thoroughly implementing pledges, our commitments enshrined in inter-Korean agreements. Once the two Koreas work together to earn the trust of the international community, more possibilities will become reality. Once the two Koreas develop into a common economic community with North Korea free from the international sanctions, the Korean Peninsula will facilitate further peace in Northeast Asia and become a place where Asia's potential is realized. The two Koreas can prosper together. The complete denuclearization and the establishment of peace on the Korean Peninsula will become a solid foundation for global non-proliferation of nuclear weapons and disarmament, as well as a role model of resolving international and military conflicts. The two Koreas will contribute to the world peace going beyond the peninsula. His Majesty the King, Speaker Norlin, Prime Minister, RICSAC members, and distinguished guests. The Korean War, regarded as the first hot war in the Cold War era, cost countless lives of not only the Korean people but also the foreign soldiers who fought in the war. The armistice was reached in 3 years after the war had broken out, yet this tragic war has not ended up to present. The two Koreas have been locked up in the Cold War structure along the military demarcation line for approximately 70 years. Efforts toward peace and coexistence were overwhelmed by the Cold War order and repeatedly thwarted. It seemed winter would not leave the Korean Peninsula. However, we have always longed for peace. The peace process on the Korean Peninsula sprouted in the bitterly cold weather during the Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games, and spring days for the peninsula are also on their way. A verse by Tranströmer, a famous Swedish poet and winner of the Nobel Prize for Literature, seems to encourage us today. It's been a hard winter, but summer is here and the fields want us to walk upright. As this poem says, a warm season is now approaching the Korean Peninsula. We will stride straight toward peace on the Korean Peninsula and thereby not lose the trust of the international community. I look forward to the people of Sweden walking beside us as you have always been for the past 7 decades. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, thank you kindly for this remarkable speech that gave us all new insights into your invaluable efforts to contribute to peaceful solutions on the Korean Peninsula.
계신 그 평화 노력을 위한 이런 일들에 대해서 놀라운 연설을 훌륭한 연설을 해주신 데 대해서 진심으로 감사드립니다.
Fortunately, we have time for a couple of questions for the President. And let me first give the floor to Olle Torell, member of the Swedish Parliament.
저희가 한 2개 정도의 질문을 받을 시간이 있는데요. 처음으로 올레 토렐 의원께 기회를 드리겠습니다.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Your Excellency, thank you for a very inspiring speech. The Swedish government has just concluded a high-level meeting ahead of the NPT conference on nuclear disarmament, where 15 countries, including South Korea, were represented here in Stockholm. The nuclear threat has in recent years become more real and evident across the globe, and disarmament has been and always will be a cornerstone of Swedish foreign policy. For your country, the nuclear threat is a present danger since many years. I would like to ask you, sir, what steps you and your government are planning to take in the future to lessen tension between North and South Korea, and what steps you aim to take to make measures towards concrete nuclear disarmament. Thank you.
대통령님, 먼저 매우 영감을 주는 그러한 연설을 해주신 데 대해 진심으로 감사드립니다. 스웨덴 정부는 최근 한국을 포함한 15개국이 참여한 가운데 핵 군축 관련 고위급 회의를 이곳 스톡홀름에서 주최하였습니다. 핵 위협은 최근 몇 년간 전 세계적으로 더욱 실질적이고 분명하게 대두되어 왔으며 군축은 스웨덴 외교 정책의 초석입니다. 대한민국의 경우 핵 위협은 단연간 실존하는 위협이 되고 있습니다. 앞으로 남북 간 긴장을 완화시키고 또한 완전한 핵 군축으로 나아가기 위해 대통령님과 또한 대한민국 정부가 어떤 조치를 취할 계획이신지 여쭙고 싶습니다.
지금 현재 우리가 추진하고 있는 그 한반도 평화 프로세스의 궁극적인 목표는 한반도의 완전한 비핵화입니다. 그것이 실현된다면 그 자체로서 핵 군축이 이루어지고 또 그것은 국제사회의 핵 확산을 방지하는 굳건한 토대가 될 것이라고 믿습니다. 남과 북은 완전한 비핵화가 이루어지면 이어서 재래식 무력에 대한 군축도 함께 노력해 나갈 계획입니다. 한국은 이런 핵 군축 등을 위한 국제사회 노력에 함께 해 나갈 것입니다.
Right now on the Korean Peninsula, my government has been pursuing the peace process, and the objective, the ultimate goal of this process is to achieve complete denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula. And once we meet this goal, once we realize complete denuclearization, this in itself will mean that we realize the nuclear disarmament on the Korean Peninsula, and this will also provide the foundation upon which the international community could pursue its efforts regarding regarding non-proliferation. And as for the two Koreas, once we achieve complete denuclearization, we will also make efforts to make efforts towards a conventional disarmament as well. So Korea, let me just conclude that Korea will continue to stand with the international community for nuclear disarmament.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Let me now give the floor to the former Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Jan Eliasson, Chair of CIPRI.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. President, thank you very much for your very warm and generous words about Sweden and about your very strong and convincing words about the peace process, the peace prospects on the Korean Peninsula. CIPRI, my organization, has been engaged with Korean affairs for some time. Most recently, as you indicated, we were organizing together with the Swedish Ministry for Foreign Affairs an informal, in-depth dialogue that brought together senior officials from your country, from North Korea, and from the United States. In terms of further steps to promote a peace process, there is general acceptance that confidence-building measures, trust-building measures, as you mentioned, could play an important role. In Europe, we have considerable experience from the Cold War with implementing a range of political and military CBMs, as we call them. As CIPRI studies and your own studies have highlighted, some of these CBMs may be applicable to the Korean Peninsula today. So that leads me to my question, Mr. President. I would like to ask you what you envision as possible further steps in confidence building between North and South Korea. What role could such steps play in supporting the inter-Korean peace and reconciliation process? Thank you very much.
대통령님 먼저 저희 스웨덴에 대해 따뜻한 말씀을 해주시고 또 대통령님께서 추진 중이신 한반도 평화 프로세스에 대한 비전을 공유해 주신 데 대해 다시 한번 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. 저희 스톡홀름 국제평화연구소는 지난 수년간 한반도 정세에 대해 지속적으로 관여해 왔습니다. 가장 최근에는 올해 스웨덴 외교부와 협력하여 영내 이슈에 정통한 남북미 고위 협상 대표들을 초청한 가운데 비공식 회동을 또 공동 주최하기도 했습니다. 영내 평화 프로세스를 촉진하기 위한 추가적인 조치들을 저희가 생각해 볼 때 신뢰 구축 조치가 중요한 역할을 할 것이라는 점은 주지의 사실이라고 생각합니다. 물론 유럽에서는 냉전 당시 다양한 정치, 군사적인 신뢰 구축 조치를 협상하고 또 이행했던 경험을 저희가 보유하고 있습니다. 그간 저희 연구소가 기울인 노력들을 통해 부각된 바 있듯이 이러한 신뢰 구축 조치 중 일부는 오늘날 한반도에도 적용이 될 수 있을 것입니다. 그래서 먼저 남북 간 신뢰 구축의 과정에서 어떠한 조치들이 가능한지 대통령님께 여쭙고 싶습니다. 또한 이러한 조치들이 한반도 평화와 또한 화해 프로세스를 지원하고 더욱 발전시켜 나가는 데 있어서 어떠한 역할을 할 수 있다고 보십니까?
의원님 말씀에 감사드립니다. 스톡홀름 평화연구소는 지난 1월 남북미의 3국 실무 협상에 참여하는 정부 인사들을 한자리에 모아서 서로 대화할 수 있는 그런 기회를 마련해 주었습니다. 그것은 남북 간 또 북미 간 서로 간의 이해를 깊게 하는 아주 좋은 기회가 되었습니다. 스웨덴은 같은 방식으로 제1차, 제2차 북미 정상회담이 개최될 수 있게 하는데 큰 도움을 주었습니다. 뿐만 아니라 옛날 2000년 김대중 대통령의 첫 남북 정상회담을 개최할 때도 스웨덴은 도움을 준 바가 있습니다. 그렇게 남북 간의 평화를 위해서 오랜 기간 동안 스웨덴이 이렇게 보여준 그런 노력에 대해서 한국 국민들은 깊이 감사드리고 있습니다.
I'd like to thank you. I know that CIPRI convened a meeting between the chief negotiators from the two Koreas and the United States in January this year, and you held a dialogue, and this actually proved to be a valuable opportunity for the negotiators from the two Koreas and the United States to enhance mutual understanding. And in the same way, Sweden has been providing great support towards the first and the second US-North Korea summits as well. And Sweden, even in year 2000, which was the year of the first inter-Korean summit at the time of late President Kim Yo-jong, Sweden had provided support even then. So I would like to thank the Swedish people on behalf of the Korean people for all this erstwhile support that Sweden has been providing.
제2차 하노이 북미 정상회담이 합의 없이 끝났기 때문에 지금 대화가 교착 상태인 것처럼 보이지만 미국의 트럼프 대통령과 북한의 김정은 위원장은 서로에 대한 신뢰를 계속해서 표명하고 있고 또 대화의 의지를 밝히고 있습니다. 뿐만 아니라 북미 간 또 남북 간의 이 물밑에서 대화는 계속 이루어지고 있기 때문에 대화의 모멘텀은 유지되고 있다고 할 수 있습니다. 미국과 한국은 언제든지 대화할 어떤 자세가 되어 있다라는 것을 공개적으로 표명했습니다. 거기에 그 시기를 이렇게 결정하는 것은 결국 김정은 위원장이 언제 호응하느냐에 달려 있다고 할 수 있습니다. 저는 북미 간 또 남북 간의 대화가 너무 늦지 않게 재개되기를 바랍니다.
Because the second US-North Korea summit, which was held in Hanoi this February, did not yield a concrete agreement, you could say that the dialogue has hit an impasse since then. However, President Trump and Chairman Kim has been expressing trust towards each other, and they've also been reiterating their commitment for continuous dialogue. And right now, between the United States and North Korea, as well as between the two Koreas, there are ongoing consultations beneath the surface. So I can say that the momentum of dialogue is being maintained. And both the United States and the Republic of Korea have publicly declared that we are ready for such a dialogue. So I would say that the timing of further summits and related dialogue depends on when Chairman Kim is ready to engage again. So my hope, my wish is that both the dialogue between Washington and Pyongyang as well as the dialogue between the two Koreas could happen in the not too distant future.
예, 그러나 대화가 재개된다 하더라도 한반도의 완전한 비핵화와 평화가 하루아침에 또는 쉽게 이루어질 것이라고 단정할 수 없습니다. 많은 시간이 걸릴 수 있을 것이며 또 인내 있는 그런 대화가 필요하다고 생각합니다. 그런 대화를 통해서 서로 간의 신뢰를 더욱 이렇게 늘려나갈 필요가 있다고 생각합니다. 그 과정에서 스웨덴이 지금까지 해온 것처럼 서로 간의 신뢰를 높일 수 있도록 계속해서 도와주시기 바랍니다.
However, even if we resume dialogue, this does not mean that complete denuclearization and permanent peace will be achieved overnight or will be achieved as easily. So it could take a very long time, which means that we have to persevere and we have to adopt a patient approach in terms of continuing the dialogue. But we do need to build more trust through such dialogue. So in this regard, I would like to count on Sweden's continued support, just as it has been providing such support to this process.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for visiting the Swedish Parliament, giving your address and answering our question. We appreciate that very much.
대통령님 이렇게 스웨덴 의회를 방문해 주시고 연설해 주시고 또 질의에 응답해 주셔서 감사드립니다. 성공을 기원드립니다.
It will now be my honor to escort you out.
저한테 퇴장하시겠습니다.
Right. So that concludes President Moon Jae-in's speech to the Swedish Parliament, and he also answered a couple of questions from officials in Sweden. Dr. Kim, quite a lot to ingest there. So a lot of messages, both to the Swedish people and Parliament and North Korea as well. He didn't really beat around the bush. He said it's pretty much up to North Korea to get the momentum going in the peace process and denuclearization talks. What was your overall assessment of his speech today?
I think he focused on the concept of trust this time. Threefold concepts he proposed. First, trust is between North and South Korean people. Second, trust is about dialogue. And third is about the international community. And throughout these messages, he clearly delivered to the North that there should be a dialogue continue. And of course, there should be trust building before dialogue, to be possible. But first, North Korea has to come out for dialogue and keep the promise for a nuclear dismantlement and peace regime. And also there should be continued North and South Korea's cooperations. These are the things that North Korea has to do before North Korea gets the trust of the international community, which I think would be signified as a sanctional relief. So I think this is a very clear message to the North throughout the speech in the Swedish Parliament.
Now, when asked about further measures to build further trust with North Korea, President Moon Jae-in said that it may seem like the talks have completely stalled since the collapse of the Hanoi summit, but that efforts are still taking place underneath the surface between North Korea and the U.S. to keep the flame of dialogue alive. Do you think these kind of efforts can result in the third round of Pyongyang-Washington summit?
I think the focus on dialogue is very important. When we look at what happened in the European case, I mean, after the, in the middle of the U.S. and former Soviet Union rivalry, what Europeans did was to continue a dialogue from the sphere of economic cooperation. The first thing that happened at the time was, to form a dialogue forum between Germany and France on the issues of coal and steel. Even though afterwards there were some times that the dialogue was stalemated, but what they did was to institutionalize the dialogue forum. And after they institutionalized, even though they did not want to come out for a dialogue forum, they had to come out for a dialogue forum and continue dialogue at the end, solve the problems. So I think the focus on dialogue and the focus on the continued dialogue is very important. Of course, it will not be easy because, what is important at this juncture is whether North Korea really have a willingness to continue dialogue. I mean, that's a very important thing. I mean, that's the reason why President Moon Jae-in continuously emphasized a trust building between North and South Koreas. But I don't know what will happen next. I mean, even though President Moon Jae-in clearly delivered all these messages emphasizing trust and continued dialogue, what is important is what kind of decisions and behavior North Korea would come out next.
All right, Dr. Kim, thank you so much for your thorough analysis. But don't go too far away because we will need you back for our news in depth following this newscast. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And staying with President Moon Jae-in's speech to the Swedish parliament, we now take a quick recap on the main points he made. The president says North Korea's practical steps for denuclearization are needed to speed up the denuclearization process.
Yes, and he also pressed that it is important to hold regular talks between the parties involved. We go live now to our senior political correspondent Shin Se-min, who is in Sweden traveling with the president. Se-min, the president today urged North Korea to do more, something we've seen in the past couple of days during the president's overseas trip to Northern Europe. Tell us more.
Right, a lot to digest. President Moon Jae-in's speech at the Parliament of Sweden is seen as if he was sending a message to North Korea's Kim Jong-un. Now, but first, moments ago, we saw President Moon Jae-in speaking at the Swedish Parliament during his state visit to the country. There, he called on the regime to demonstrate its strong willpower for complete denuclearization through practical measures. Listen to this.
북한은 완전한 핵폐기와 평화체제 구축 의지를 국제사회에 실질적으로 보여줘야 합니다. 국제사회의 신뢰를 얻을 때까지 양자대화와 다자대화를 가리지 않고 국제사회와 대화를 계속해야 합니다. 잘 교육받은 청년들은
And one way to prove to the world, President Moon said, is by fulfilling the promises of inter-Korean cooperation made by the two Koreas. Moon also called on Pyongyang to meet halfway in accelerating the deals signed by the two sides during their summit last year at the border village of Panmunjeom. Now, President Moon also said that the regime renews trust, that when the regime renews its trust, the world will then respond with the assurance of sanctions relief and even a security guarantee. And he also pointed to the importance of holding talks, whether they be bilateral or multilateral, alluding that the absence of official summit meetings isn't helpful in resolving the denuclearization process. And if you recall back of a couple of days, throughout his trip to Northern Europe this week, President Moon repeatedly sent out messages to the major parties of the nuclear talks. For one, he called on Kim Jong-un to make up his mind on holding what would be the fourth inter-Korean summit, possibly by the end of this month, and even called for talks between Kim and U.S. President Donald Trump, saying that the prolonged absence of official talks isn't desirable. So certainly this week has been a game changer in that the stalled denuclearization process may see some extra boost and some progress after all, as the President Moon had been calling on the major parties to come together for talks, and that in this, especially as we are waiting to hold for another summit meeting, a diplomacy-heavy week of G20 summit in Japan at the end of this month, where we will see a lot of the major parties meeting on the sidelines to talk about the denuclearization process. Guys, back to you.
Our Shin Se-min in Stockholm for us tonight. Thank you. Earlier this week, the North Korean leader's sister, Kim Yo-jong, went to the inter-Korean border at Panmunjeom to offer her condolences for the passing of former South Korean First Lady Lee Hee-ho. The Blue House says that gesture by the North is worth paying attention to. When asked today about the possibility of an inter-Korean summit happening this month, a senior Blue House official said Kim Yo-jong's visit is symbolic and carries exceptional meaning, which he said the Blue House is taking special note of. The North had said Lee Hee-ho's wish for peace and unification should be honored by the two sides. A statement the official said can be interpreted as a desire for dialogue and peace. Meanwhile, the former First Lady has been laid to rest as South Koreans said their final goodbyes. A funeral service was held earlier today, and now she's been laid to rest beside her husband, the late former President Kim Dae-jung. And North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's message of condolence was also read at the service. Our Kim Min-ji was there.
The funeral for former First Lady Lee Hee-ho was held on Friday. Lee, the wife of late former President Kim Dae-jung, died on Monday at the age of 97. Thousands of people gathered to pay their respects, including top government officials, lawmakers, and members of the public. Prime Minister Lee Na-gyun delivered a eulogy.
We've lost a great person of our time. She was the symbol of the hardships and glory of our modern history. We will not stop our efforts to achieve her dreams of achieving the people's happiness and of peaceful unification.
Lee is not just remembered as a First Lady, but also one of the first generation of female activists in South Korea. During her life, Lee fought for women's rights and democracy, organizing various civic groups. She also spearheaded efforts to promote the Sunshine Policy of inter-Korean reconciliation, the former President Kim created during his presidency between 1998 and 2003. Lee was also a supportive companion to her husband through his turbulent and illustrious political life, which included receiving a death sentence and winning the Nobel Peace Prize.
She devoted her life to democracy. She's someone that all South Koreans should emulate.
I wonder if there will be anybody like her again. It's very hard to let her go. I believe that the privileges that females enjoy now are a result of the former First Lady's efforts. I respect her and truly mourn her death.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un also sent flowers and a condolence letter over Lee's passing, which was read out during the funeral service. There had been speculation that Pyongyang could send a mourning delegation, as it has done in the past for figures that contributed to inter-Korean relations, and given that the former First Lady attended the funeral of Kim's father, Kim Jong-il.
The devotion and efforts of First Lady Lee Hee-ho and former President Kim Dae-jung toward reconciliation, peace, and unification have become the foundation of current inter-Korean ties.
In her will, Lee wrote that she would pray for the Korean people and a peaceful unification of the two Koreas in heaven. With her passing, South Korea bids farewell to one of the first-generation figures that took the country a step further toward peace and democracy. Lee has now been laid to rest beside her husband at the Seoul National Cemetery. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Washington's nuclear envoy Stephen Biegun is set to visit Seoul near the end of this month, which could bring fresh momentum to the stalled nuclear talks between North Korea and the U.S. Our Lee Ji-won has more.
U.S. Special Representative for North Korea Stephen Biegun is to arrive in Seoul on the 24th of June, days ahead of President Donald Trump's arrival in South Korea. A Foreign Affairs source confirmed the news on Friday without giving much detail on Biegun's visit. Seoul's Foreign Affairs Ministry says that nothing has been confirmed, but that close communication with the U.S. on related matters is always being made. The U.S. Embassy in Seoul also said that it has nothing to confirm. Now, Biegun's arrival would come just before President Trump is expected to have his summit with President Moon Jae-in, possibly on the 29th. And if Biegun does not attend the G20 summit in Japan on 28th and 29th, that could mean that he will be staying in Seoul through the whole week. This 6-day stay is an extraordinarily long one, since he usually visits for just 3 or 4 days. And this is prompting speculation that Biegun could try to contact the North Koreans at the border village of Panmunjeom during his stay. Despite the long standstill between Pyongyang and Washington since the Hanoi summit, Trump's recent announcement that he received a letter from North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has renewed hopes that denuclearization talks will move forward soon. Meanwhile, Washington has beefed up its team of officials for East Asian affairs. The Senate confirmed on Thursday former Air Force General David Stilwell's appointment as the Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs, a role which had remained empty for more than 2 years despite major challenges in the region. It's been nearly 8 months since President Trump nominated the former fighter pilot. The new top diplomat for East Asia is known for his familiarity with the region through his degrees related to South Korea and China and the ability to speak Korean, Chinese, and some Japanese. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
Shifting gears now, and the US has blamed Iran for Thursday's attacks on 2 oil tankers, the latest in a series of attacks on global oil supplies passing through the Strait of Hormuz. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo blamed Iran for the latest attack on 2 oil tankers in the Gulf of Oman, owned by Japan and Norway, further raising tensions in the Middle East. This is the latest attack in the region following blasts on 4 oil tankers last month, affecting prices of crude as a third of all global oil traded by sea passes through the Strait of Hormuz, the near mouth of the Persian Gulf near the Gulf of Oman.
This assessment is based on intelligence, the weapons used, the level of expertise needed to execute the operation, recent similar Iranian attacks on shipping, and the fact that no proxy group operating in the area has the resources and proficiency to act with such a high degree of sophistication.
The incident has put a dent to Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's mediating efforts to ease tensions between Tehran and Tokyo's key ally Washington, as the attacks occurred on a Japanese tanker during the premier's 2-day visit to Iran. Tehran has categorically rejected any involvement in the incident. Iran's deputy permanent representative to the UN told Japanese NHK broadcaster on Friday that it was Washington that was behind the attacks, reiterating its foreign minister's claim that the U.S. had not provided any evidence to such unfounded claims. Right after the attacks late on Thursday, Iran's UN mission released a statement calling for an urgent dialogue among all countries surrounding the Persian Gulf to ease tensions, and called on the international community to prevent the reckless and dangerous policies and practices of the U.S. and its regional allies in heightening tensions in the region. Prices of Brent crude oil, the international standard, jumped 4% from the previous session to over $62 a barrel on Thursday. For now, the Korean government sees impact on local prices of gas and oil to be limited. But the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy says it may become a severe problem if oil shipments through the Strait of Hormuz are completely blocked. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Turning to the local economy now, and the Finance Ministry's latest economic report shows that one of the main reasons for Korea's slumping exports and investment is slower growth of the global economy, including in China. Ko Ryun-hee with the details.
South Korea's overall industrial production is showing a modest increase, but exports and investment remain sluggish. This is the latest assessment of Korea's economy by the Finance Ministry on Friday. According to the monthly Greenberg report for June, the South Korean government has been using the word sluggish for 3 consecutive months. As for why, the ministry pointed to uncertainties abroad, such as slower global economic growth, the struggling semiconductor industry, and the U.S.-China trade spat. The biggest hit came from exports, which made up a whopping 44% of Korea's total GDP last year. Data shows that Korea's exports dropped by more than 9% on year in May, and have been on the slide for 6 consecutive months. Exports to China, which account for around a quarter of Korea's total exports, dropped by more than 20% in May. This is related to the slower growth of Beijing's economy. Korea's finance ministry pointed out that Purchasing Managers' Index for China's manufacturing sector dropped last month. The index, which is an indicator of economic health in the manufacturing and service sectors, fell to 49.4 in May from 50.1 in the previous month. Other than exports, construction investment in Korea fell by almost 3% on month in April. And retail sales also dropped slightly during the same period due to poor sales of durable goods such as passenger cars. On a brighter note, overall industrial production increased for 2 consecutive months in April, thanks to improving figures in manufacturing and service sectors. To turn things around, the Finance Ministry again stressed the importance of the National Assembly quickly passing the supplementary budget bill. The ministry also vowed to actively come up with measures to boost main indicators such as exports and include them in the economic policy direction for the second half of 2019. 고르니, Arirang News.
South Korea's government ministries have requested $422 billion for next year's budget. According to the Finance Ministry, that's an on-year increase of 6.2%. The money would go toward more welfare and defense spending, as well as R&D to nurture innovative sectors, including the hydrogen economy, AI, 5G network services, and biohealth. The ministry will finalize the budget proposal and submit it to the National Assembly by September 3rd for approval. Getting ready to take on Ukraine in the much-anticipated Under-20 World Cup final this weekend. The young Taeguk Warriors held their first open training session on Thursday local time in Poland, and they seemed confident ahead of the big match. Kan Hyung-woo reports.
Ahead of the Under-20 World Cup final against Ukraine, the Taeguk Warriors were all smiles during their open practice session on Thursday local time in Woods. Team Korea did not shy away from showing their confidence.
Ukraine is a strong team, but I think our players are better and we have the edge over them. Our defense has gotten tighter and our offensive line is doing its role, so we're all confident that we can win the final match.
Team Korea's open practice lasted for about an hour, and the players mainly focused on recovery as they have played 6 games over the span of 20 days. Staying in the same building as Ukraine's under-20 football team, the young Taeguk Warriors are not giving anything away to their opponents.
We don't see the Ukrainians that much, but when there's an encounter with them, we make sure to show our confidence by giving them a good stare. We don't look away until they do.
Ukraine's under-20s were expected to open the first 15 minutes of their practice, but they closed the session abruptly and kicked out the media personnel. Meanwhile, in South Korea, fans are getting ready to cheer on the young players, organizing public screenings of the match across the country, including at the Seoul World Cup Stadium. The Under-20 World Cup final will kick off at 1 a.m. on Sunday, Korea time. Kan Hyung-woo, Arirang News.
Now, from football to swimming, the 18th edition of the FINA World Championships, which will be held in Gwangju and Yeosu from July 12th to the 28th, has officially completed registration with a record of nearly 3,000 athletes from 193 countries set to compete. And to successfully welcome everyone, the host cities are putting the final touches on the venues. Won Jung-hwan reports.
The largest ever World Swimming Championships is just less than a month away. And here at the Athletics Village, 25 high-rise buildings are getting ready to accommodate more than 6,000 participants from around the world who will start arriving a week before the start of the competition. The village, which covers over 90,000 square meters, is getting the final touches in terms of construction before greeting athletes, media workers, and officials from around the world. It's divided into 3 separate zones, International Athletes and Media Zone, and plans to provide various conveniences and support facilities that are equal to those 4-star hotels. And besides the Athletic Village, the actual venues where fans will meet world-class swimmers are also in the last stages of preparation to host the swimming championships, which will see the most ever participants competing. There are a total of 5 venues across Gwangju and Yeosu, and Gwangju's Nambu University, where 2 of the venues are, is looking forward to greeting FINA inspectors next week.
Almost 96.5% is done, and the rest will be finished before FINA facility inspectors arrive on June 20th. But if there are some additional requirements or incomplete construction, we will fulfill those checklists accordingly before the start of the championships.
The university's Aquatics Center is the first swimming venue in the nation to adopt a state-of-the-art operation automation system to provide the best water quality for the athletes. One of the most user-friendly swimming facilities in Asia will allow over 16,000 spectators to enjoy the main disciplines of the swimming and diving competitions during the championships. And just outside the main venue, a water polo facility is being constructed where a football field used to be.
Previously, there was a football field. As agreed with the university, we tried to focus on how to not dig up the land and not create any waste during the construction process. And after the competition ends, the football field will be restored just like it was before.
With the deadline of each venue's completed construction getting closer and closer, it means one thing. Gwangju and Yeosu are ready to welcome the country's first and biggest swimming championships. 원정환, 아리랑 뉴스, 광주.
The CEO of South Korean media giant YG Entertainment, Yang Hyun-suk, has announced that he's stepping down from his posts at the company amid drug charges against its singers. The company has been embroiled in a series of drug scandals, the latest involving BI, a new former member of K-pop boy band iKON. He quit the group on Wednesday because of the allegations that he bought drugs 3 years ago. Yang, the CEO, is alleged to have pressured the witness who reportedly gave the drugs to BI to change her testimony to the police. Other K-pop stars affiliated with YG include Big Bang and Blackpink. While in Sweden, President Moon Jae-in is going to visit local businesses in the country, including Ericsson, one of the world's leading suppliers of network equipment. And ahead of the president's visit there, Oh Soo-young got to sit down with the CEO of a joint venture between Ericsson and the Korean IT giant LG Electronics.
South Korean and Swedish companies are the perfect match for business cooperation in the 5G network industry. That's according to Håkan Salval, CEO of Ericsson LG. Speaking to Arirang News ahead of his meeting with President Moon Jae-in in Sweden on Friday, Salval said his company aims to expand its business presence in South Korea. Ericsson LG was launched as a joint venture in 2010 between the Swedish and South Korean IT giants.
I think the reason why Korea is a very interesting market for us as Ericsson is, of course, that it's a very mature and advanced ICT market. It's also a market where it's driven both by the government and by ICT companies who wants to be first. And us being a technology leader, we want to work in the markets that is really advanced and who wants to be first using new type of technology.
South Korea was the first country in the world to launch the 5G network for the average mobile user in early April. The company is working with South Korea's largest telecom firms to roll out 5G equipment around the country to overcome issues with connectivity and the currently insufficient coverage of base stations outside metropolitan areas.
And this is a new technology. And when a new technology is introduced, it normally takes some time to tune and optimize that in the real life. And that's what we are seeing right now. The networks in Korea is getting more and more stable, are performing better and better, and it's happening day by day. And I'm sure that the subscribers here in Korea will very soon be very happy with the performance of 5G.
South Korea announced a plan to create an $158 billion 5G industry by the year 2026 by spurring the development of gadgets and software that will utilize the super-fast wireless network.
As a matter of fact, this is one of the reasons why I love to be in Korea, because Korea, from a government perspective and from an operator perspective, they're all very committed. So the government expectation, and you're referring to the 5G Plus, is that this is going to create a lot of new revenue, actually 180 trillion won over the next number of years. It's going to create a number of new jobs, 600,000, and it's going to be contributing to the export of Korea. So this fact will actually make it possible for Korean companies to take advantage of this, to be more competitive, to be more efficient, or to be more sustainable.
Well, with President Moon's state visit to Sweden, what kind of opportunities do you see for business cooperation between the two countries?
I think there is a perfect match actually between Korea and Sweden. And ICT is of course an obvious area, which is an industry that would have an impact on every single industry. It doesn't matter if it's transportation or health or utilities or whatever it may be. A company today would have to explore how they can make use of mobile technology or 5G technology to make sure that they remain competitive going forward.
Anticipating further partnership between the two countries, Salval says he hopes the joint venture will continue to optimize the strength of Korea and Sweden's leadership in ICT. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Researchers from the U.S. and Japan have found a clue that could help stave off the negative effects of aging and possibly extend human lifespans. Following an experiment with mice, they found that an aging in older mice could be delayed by giving them an enzyme from younger mice that keeps them healthy. The researchers see the latest findings as having potential for anti-aging intervention in humans. The city of Seoul is looking for non-Korean residents who have been role models to the capital's citizens and international residents. It's accepting applications for honorary citizenship in recognition of contributions to the local community until July 19th. Candidates need to have lived in Seoul for more than 3 consecutive years and made significant contributions to the city in one of many aspects, including culture, economy, or science. Those given honorary citizenship will be invited to official events and will get discounted admissions to the capital's facilities. Those interested can apply through the post or in person. Details are available on the Seoul City's website. It's been partly cloudy here in Seoul, whereas it's been raining in the south.
That's right. And let's get more on the weather from our Michelle Park, who is at the Weather Center for us. Michelle, what's the latest?
Good evening, guys. Now, the weather wasn't too hot today due to some cloud cover. And unlike here in Seoul, the southern provinces and Jeju have been under rain clouds and are expecting a maximum of 40 millimeters along the coast of Gyeongsangnam, the province, through the night. And we are also seeing some light rain in the east due to the unstable atmosphere. Now, Saturday is expected to be somewhat cloudy with continuing sporadic showers even in the capital, so I suggest you have your umbrellas handy tomorrow. And the same goes for Tokyo. There are chances of rain, possibly over 25 millimeters. Now, Saturday morning's temperature will be similar to recent days, ranging between 16 to 19 degrees Celsius, as Seoul beginning at 18 degrees. The daily highs will be a lot cooler in the south due to the overcast skies, while Seoul will rise up to 27 degrees. By Sunday, we will be able to look up to clear skies again with higher temperatures as well. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
Well, that will wrap it up for this edition of Arirang News. Thank you, as always, for watching.
News in depth is next.